The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
you're now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am, of course, your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Wednesday night, December 14, 2016. Thank you so much for joining us. It is always a pleasure. Thank you so much to our patrons without whom we cannot do the Benjamin Dixon Show. We had a great time with our bonus show last night. If you want to get access to the bonus material, go to patreon.com/the BPD show or the Benjamin. I don't know what it is. It's out there. Some links are out there. You can find me if you wanted to find me. A lot happening in the news, and I mean that in the most literal sense possible. So let's jump in. I want to start with Russia again. It's actually very necessary to discuss Russia. Yet again, NBC News has released, just before the show, they released a article stating that two U.S. officials, unnamed officials, obviously, who have access to classified information, have confirmed for them that Vladimir Putin directly directed the cyber attack and the rollout, more precisely, the rollout of the information as it was leaked in the DNC hack. The article claims that that Vladimir Putin has had a long-standing vendetta against Hillary Clinton, and as a result, that was one of the reasons. The other reason for the hack was because they wanted to delegitimize America, the idea that America was a solid global force, a global factor. So just reading directly from NBC, it says two senior officials with direct access to the information say new intelligence shows that Putin personally directed how hacked material from Democrats was leaked and otherwise used. The article goes on to say the intelligence came from diplomatic sources and spies working for U.S. allies, the official said. And I don't know if you could tell the tone in my voice. The tone in my voice is like, really? What's amazing? Let me give you just 2 seconds behind the scenes here at the Benjamin Dixon Show. I sent this article over to my colleague who works with me here in the studio, Research. And his immediate reaction was, well, we're obviously not going to cover this story, right? And his reason for saying that was because it's an entire story that's put together on the back of two anonymous sources. And considering how high the stakes are in a conversation like this, why would we run with the story? Well, that's actually the story for me. The story for me is the fact that journalists and political shills are running with this narrative because they've gotten it from a quote unquote reputable source, NBC News, right? NBC couldn't possibly have any agenda other than getting confirmation of anonymous information that, gets them great clicks. But when the stakes are this high, is it not reasonable to assert that we need more than just anonymous sources? And I'm not talking about just the stakes being high in this issue of the election and people who are trying to keep Donald Trump from being seated as the president by January 20th. And that's an entirely different conversation. I'm talking about how cavalierly we are running into a potential conflict with Russia off of, and let me, I don't want you to misconstrue my words, right? We are not talking about jumping from 0 to 100 on an actual conflict, because there's plenty of steps to go between this red baiting and an actual confrontation with Russia. But the story for me is the willingness with which people who have criticized Republicans for doing this exact same thing are now doing the exact same thing because it benefits their narrative. Like it's grossly irresponsible to revel in this type of information without having any verifiable sources. I mean, an unnamed source is so unverifiable, and then we're in a particular situation where this actually freaking matters. It matters. Like if this was a story about, I don't know, I mean, if this was a story about the DNC chair election, an unnamed source is not that pivotal. It's not, whatever they could say about that election is not going to be groundbreaking or earth shattering, right? But now we have two unconfirmed or two anonymous sources who have said something to, and here's the thing. We're at the point and maybe we should have always been at this point, but I'm not comfortable taking this information from secondhand, third-hand sources, even if they work for the intelligence agencies. I'm not comfortable whatsoever, especially with this type of information, right? We're talking about sources of a hack. We're talking about motivations behind the hack. This is stuff that is pretty verifiable by some pretty standard practices in the tech industry. Like we can verify this information, but not a single piece of information has been, or a single piece of evidence has been, and not even a person willing to put their name by it, right? It's one thing for them not to put information in the public for us to vet it for ourselves, which when we're talking about something with the stakes being this high is not unreasonable whatsoever. But we're talking about people who won't even put their name behind what they've said. This is like the fucking telephone game in elementary school, right? This could be any number of, can we just verify before we go headlong into being willing to have a confrontation with Russia? Or here's the flip side of it. I don't think people are really using this because they're like, okay, hey, let's put Russia in its place. They're not going to go that far. They're just using this to the extent that they could say, hey, let's keep Vladimir Trump. Let's keep Donald Trump from becoming the president of the United States. Okay, you want to play that game? That's fine. Now, who are you going to put in? Who are you going to put in? We discussed this last night. If you're going to use this, if you're not using this information as a means to actually get into a confrontation with Russia, or to have some type of reciprocity or some type of reaction, if we're not going to do something to Russia to stop them, then why are you pounding these drums about Russia? Well, because you just want to use it to stop Donald Trump from becoming the president of the United States. My question for that audience is, do you really think they're going to put Hillary Clinton in? And are you that deranged? And I'm sorry, I just have to go straight to, are you that deranged with Hillary losing that you're willing to tear the country apart in order to put Hillary Clinton in? Because, the reason I phrase it like that is because you can sure as hell bet that if we don't put in Trump, they're not going to put in Hillary Clinton. So what's the purpose and the motivation behind this? Because if the motivation is just to create this Red Scare environment, then this is so beyond irresponsible that journalists sharing this outside of the context of ridicule and scorn should be ashamed of themselves and lose their licenses, which don't exist, right? There's no license to be a journalist. But otherwise, are you doing this just to keep Trump from becoming president? I mean, if we're going to put in, and I saw this, there's a tweet from our new episode from Keith Olbermann about resist, right? And he's saying, wouldn't you rather have a president, because he knows they're not going to put Hillary Clinton in. He says, wouldn't you rather have a president Mitt Romney or a president Evan McMullin, the CIA conservative from Utah? And my response to that is the same as my response yesterday. They're going to do the same damn things. They're just going to do it more politely. So, Putin, the blame on Russia. That's all we've been doing since the election, and it's getting to the point where people are willing to speculate with unconfirmed sources, with conversations that are at a minimum too dangerous to be speculating without some confirmation, some vetting of the information. I don't think anyone who is not asking for that basic standard is either just a Neanderthal who doesn't need to be in the conversation, or a person with a political agenda that's more important to them than the dangers of this type of conversation. And now let's go to this other side of the equation, right? So let's say Russia did it. And let's say Russia and Vladimir Putin actually did this expressly to undermine Hillary Clinton, right? And we can confirm it. And we can see this is I have a pretty high standard, because if we prove something and it's verifiable by more than just our personal intelligence agencies, because I've got a problem with them, then we should do something. We should not stand by and just let this happen. But do you realize that next conversation is so precarious that it's best for us to verify the information before we even go down that road? Like, it's like, if I'm going to bitch slap somebody, I want to make sure I'm slapping them on good information. I don't want to set something off on bad information. It's just make common sense. Verify before you act. 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation. Plenty to talk about tonight. Sad news. Just continuation in a long series of sad stories that come at the hands of our police departments. Story of Francisco Serna, 73-year-old killed. He was killed in Bakersfield, California. He was killed on Monday morning. He was walking around his neighborhood, and he's a 73-year-old with dementia. And I don't know if any of you have had personal experience with that, but it can put you in any type of state at any moment mentally. And so Francisco Serna, at 73 with dementia, he was killed by the police. He was walking around his neighborhood in the morning, and something his family said that he did frequently. According to the article, police said that they were responding to a 911 call claiming that Serna was armed with a gun. Turns out that it was not a gun. After they shot and killed him, it turns out that it was a crucifix, a cross. And so he was shot several times, and he was killed, pronounced dead at the hospital. There's a quote from the family that says, "It's difficult to accept that our dad's life ended so brutally, abruptly, and with such excessive violence," the family said during their vigil. Here's the thing, and we've discussed this quite a bit on the show, and unfortunately, we're going to have to keep discussing this on the show, because when you call the police out, they are not equipped. America's not equipped for mental health services anymore, and situations. And I know this is slightly different because this was a neighbor calling 911, but I believe the Washington Post reported it was 1 out of 4 shootings, police killings of unarmed people have been people who have been struggling with some type of mental illness. And then it goes to the fact of mental health services in that neighborhood and awareness in that neighborhood. And when you call the police, we're at the point where you shouldn't call them unless some type of violent force is necessary, because they're going to bring violent force in far too many cases. They bring the violence. They bring the disturbance. They create the scenario that could have been easily de-escalated by someone, some professional. It could have been easily de-escalated by a family member, if it even needed to be de-escalated at all. And they show up to the scene, guns blazing, and kill a 73-year-old man with dementia. I mean, I wish, if nothing else, from these stories, we could kind of get to a place where we realize never call the police unless it's a life or death situation. And I mean, and even in this case, it's like, what could they have done? Because it was a neighbor who didn't know anything about it who called the police. Because it's asking, obviously, too much for our police to come to the scene, to ascertain the nature of the problem first, right? To ask questions first before they shoot. It's asking too much of them to do that. So it's clearly incumbent upon the general community for us to be more careful before we call. Yes, it's victim blaming. I'm blaming us. At this point, once we realize that the police are not coming out there to find out what happened, they're coming out there and creating situations that are far more deadly than they ever needed to be. And since we can't count on our police to actually come and ascertain what the problem is before they pull out their gun and start shooting, then it's incumbent on us to protect ourselves and realize, maybe this is not a situation we should call the police on. It's probably the worst advice I've ever given you on this show. But at the same time, it might be the best advice, might be the advice that saves your life. I don't know. Take it with a grain of salt. But unfortunately, Francisco Serna, 73-year-old man, is dead today because someone called the police as he was having an episode. And that's the that's sort of the nature of policing in America right now. All right. In other news, let's actually, I guess since this is as good a spot as any. So today marks 4 years since the tragedy at Sandy Hook. I remember exactly where I was when I found out what happened. I got an alert. I was still teaching at the time. I was a teacher, and I got an alert, and my class had just come back in. We were just getting ready to go home for holiday break, Christmas break, whatever you want to call it, and got the notification that this tragedy had happened. The scope and the scale and the magnitude of it was something that you would think would change America. 20 children, 6 teachers killed, Newtown, Connecticut. You would think it was something significant enough to actually change America. But then immediately we fell into the same traps, into the same conversations, the same political posturing. And it was at that point that it became painfully clear that no matter what happens in America, we're not going to be willing to have any conversations, not make substantive changes. We won't have substantive conversations about the damage that guns violence does in America every single day. That's when I realized, when I saw how we turned a blind eye to Sandy Hook and did nothing. I mean, nothing changed. Not even the tone of our conversations changed. I mean, when you saw people willing, I think it was Joe the plumber, who's irrelevant in world history, American history, and irrelevant for the history of today. But at the time, he had a platform. And at the time, he's made the statement that essentially saying that dead children should not infringe on my Second Amendment rights. You know, to see people willing to go as far as minimizing this tragedy and keeping everything the same, that's when I realized, or maybe it was just confirmation again, that America is, no matter what happens, the most powerful lobby in the United States of America is the NRA. The thing that would never change is the ease with which people who are deranged and people who are just sick and people who want to hurt people. You could use whatever word you want to describe. At the end of the day, these people want to inflict as much pain as they possibly can, and we will never change. I don't see it. I don't see us ever changing the ease with which people like that can get weapons that can do this amount of damage and this amount of carnage and end this many lives. So God bless America, right? I think Jeremiah Wright had something to say about that. You can watch that clip. 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation. Let's just keep trucking through. So Larry Lessig said on Tuesday that there are about 20 GOP electors who may not vote for Trump in the Electoral College vote, making them, quote unquote, faithless electors. You remember Larry Lessig is the Harvard professor who was running for president in the Democratic Party. His focus was solely on campaign finance reform. Lessig's anti-Trump group is called the Electors Trust, and they have been offering pro bono legal counsel to Republican presidential electors considering ditching Trump. According to the article today, Lessig said, quote, obviously, whether an elector ultimately votes his or her conscience will depend in part upon whether they are enough doing the same. We now believe there are more than half of the number needed to change the results seriously considering making that vote. All right, so there's a guy out of Texas named Chris Supran, and he has publicly declared his intent to cast his vote for someone other than Donald Trump. You have a push by other electors for a briefing on the information from Russia, so they can get an intelligence briefing so that they can make their decision after the fact. The 538 members of the Electoral College, out of them, 306 are Republicans, 232 Democrats. They will gather in their capitals, the respective state capitals, in December this month on the 19th, and cast their votes for president. Here again is my dilemma, and I want to know, what do you think? I don't see any substantive difference between, in terms of appointments, in terms of an administration, in terms of Supreme Court picks, in terms of anything else. I don't see a substantive difference between Donald Trump and Mitt Romney or Evan McMullin. I don't. I see a qualitative difference. I see a character difference. I see a temperament difference. You know, if you honestly think Donald Trump is going to, shoot off a nuclear missile as quick as he will a Twitter account, then yeah, if you really believe that, then you are required to vote against him in the Electoral College, right? You'll be doing yourself a disservice. You won't be true to yourself. But I'm not of the opinion that Donald Trump is that deranged. I think he's deranged, but I don't think he's that deranged, particularly because of who he's surrounding himself with. He's surrounding himself with status quo Republicans, establishment Republicans. The most damage he's going to do is on the economy, Social Security, Affordable Care Act. He's going to ravage those things, the coffers, the deficit. He's going to blow it up out of the. I mean, that's what he's going to do. And I don't see a substantive difference between who Mitch McConnell or Mitt Romney would choose or Evan McMullin, because they're still going to pick people who are going to ravage the coffers, who are going to explode the deficit, who are going to undermine the Affordable Care Act, who is going to undermine marriage equality. I don't see a substantive difference between Donald Trump. I see a character difference. But again, like we said yesterday, how do you prefer your bigotry? Do you want your bigotry to be loud and orange like Donald Trump, or do you want your bigotry to be nice and polished like Evan McMullin? Now, for those people who are deluded enough to actually think the Electoral College should put in Hillary Clinton, I'm going to be as hyperbolic as I've ever been. Are you that stuck on Hillary Clinton that you're willing to risk a fucking civil war? Because can you imagine the damage that would be done to America if they take this election from Donald Trump and give it to Hillary Clinton? I don't care if Vladimir Putin himself got behind his computer and hacked into, like a stray hack into the election machines and changed the physical votes from Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump. I don't care if he did that. The impact will still be the same if they try. And this is expressly for the people who actually believe the Electoral College would put Hillary Clinton in. Can you imagine the fallout that will occur after something like that happens? I don't personally think we can come back from that. I think that is as much an existential threat to our republic as people are saying Vladimir Putin is right now. I think it's more dangerous for the Electoral College to put Hillary Clinton in than it would be for us to live 4 years with Donald Trump. Because you act like you think Donald Trump is going to go quietly into the night. Donald Trump is stupid enough to get on Twitter and say, burn this bitch down. That's how crazy Donald Trump is. You think he's going to sit by and let the Electoral College give this to Hillary Clinton? I mean, shit, I don't think he's going to sit by and let it be given to Mitt Romney or Evan McMullin, right? So there's a danger in this no matter how you cut it, but there's a clear and present danger if we give this to Hillary Clinton, if the Electoral College gives this to Hillary Clinton. So I'm saying that because I don't know why anybody would actually think that was a possibility. But if you want that to be the possibility and you're pushing this blame Russia narrative and you're pushing this CIA confirmed hack, if you're pushing this and you're pushing it with hopes of this somehow getting Hillary Clinton elected to the White House, I want you to know that you have put your deranged, sycophant love with Hillary Clinton. You've put that above the security of the United States of America. Not to mention the people that you would piss off the most have the most guns. I mean, I could see Donald Trump quite literally going to Twitter and calling for a revolution. And you have some ignorant enough people out there who would almost, that type of coup is not tenable. I've been hyperbolic enough. I'll leave it there. That type of activity, I'm going to even roll it back even more. That type of political shenanigans, it's not tenable in America today. And that's just my take. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, man, that's Bryce. What's going on?
Hey, Bryce, what's happening, man? What's up?
Yeah, I wonder if they're really going to, if they're going to do it, they're not going to put Hillary in because all hell going to break loose. They'll put Mitt Romney in. Now, I'm not saying that some of Trump's supporters are trying no crazy stuff because Trump not in there, but I think they might pull back if it's obviously Republican, and if it's Mitt Romney, well, I don't know. I'm not saying they're going to do it. I don't know if they want to do it, or they're just trying to give people a last hope for Trump not to be president. But it is going to be very interesting to see if they're going to do it or not, because I think they might be looking at the bigger picture is, okay, if Trump stays in with all everybody, his whole cabinet, the country could take a big hit. And do we really want to take a big hit where we won't win another election probably forever? Or do we want to have like a status quo Republican that might do some good things but be better than Bush and that can, get reelected and have a better chance of getting reelected? So they're kind of weighing the pros and cons. And yeah, the Hillary is done. They no.
Yeah.
This is about Mitt Romney and whoever else, other Republican, that they're going to do. But I don't know. We'll see how this goes. And one last point about the guy that was killed, the 73-year-old. And obviously, it's. I know it's more of us black people getting with the situation, but even in white America, it happens to their own when police shoot a guy 7 times. 73 years old with dementia, and it's just sad. It's like the training, just the whole thing is just sad, man.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. It happens as a percentage disproportionately to African Americans. And I said this. I've been saying this. You have a lot of people who believe in the police state and police overreach of power, and then they turn a blind eye when it happens in the black community. You have that it's amazing. If you go to some of these cop block websites, like you have people who are all about police overreach in general, but then when it specifically hits the black community or Black Lives Matter, they're like, oh no, it's not really police overreach. And I'm like, bitch, don't you realize that if you allow the police state in the black community, it's going to spill over into the white community? The police state, if it's here in America, it started first in the black community. And it blows me away that people are capable of seeing it in general, but they're blind to it specifically when it hits the black community. And I remember what it was like 2 years ago when I first started the show. That year, police officers killed 2 teenage white girls. I mean, granted, one of them did come into the police station and she threw a donut, but it was a donut, right? I'm like, what the hell? You have to shoot and kill a person that threw a donut at you? But I digress. But they killed 2 teenage white girls. And I'm like, if police are unarmed, except armed with a donut, and if police are that far gone, then you sure as hell know what they're doing in the black community. The point of that entire little tirade is that as racially motivated as some of these shootings are, as too many of these shootings are, we have a common fight against an overly aggressive, hyper-militarized, ambitious police force that is out there literally killing thousands of unarmed Americans every single year. But I digress. All right, let's hit a couple other stories. So Yahoo News, Yahoo.com has yet again been hacked. You remember just over less than a year ago, I believe. Less than a year ago, they reported that they had been hacked and over 500 million accounts were compromised. But this is a new release saying that in August of 2013, 3 years later, that they were hacked and the account information for 1 billion users was stolen. This is a separate hack from the 500 million that was reported in September of this year, right? So there is some overlap between the affected accounts. Of course, I don't think Yahoo had that many unique users. I know they had a lot of unique users. I'm just messing with you, Yahoo. But there's some overlap and information was stolen. Yahoo said in September that it had evidence that the linking the 500 million account breach to the state to a state-sponsored actor. They said that the latest breach was uncovered as a part of a continuing investigations by authorities and security experts. They don't know who's behind this 1 billion account breach that was announced today. And it does not appear that the two breaches were linked. It's interesting because more and more information is coming out about these types of breaches as we get closer to the proposed Verizon purchase. They're looking to acquire Yahoo. And in a statement, Verizon said, as we've said all along, we will evaluate the situation as Yahoo continues its investigation. We will review the impact of this new development before reaching any final conclusions. So I don't know if Yahoo is trying to get all this information out before this purchase by Verizon. I'm not sure the strategy there, because this actually took place in 2013. Maybe it was a PR thing. Maybe they said, let's just take it on the chin now and get this out of the way so that we can continue this purchase, this buyout by Verizon. Just to give you an idea of the type of information that was stolen, the names, emails, telephone numbers, passwords, and encrypted or unencrypted security questions. So basically everything they need to get full access to your account. All right. In other news, this is an interesting story that it might take a little time for us to unpack. So Uber, kind of fascinated with this story, but the implications are pretty staggering. So Uber has expanded its self-driving car pilot to San Francisco. It has started picking up passengers. Like, they've rolled it out, self-driving cars. They have a brand. It's you can see behind me on the screen, there's a Volvo that they use in this. And Uber Each Uber, they do have a driver in the driver's seat for the time being, but the car is being automated. It's automated driving, right? So any customer who requests an Uber X using the app, they're eligible for a ride in one of the new Volvos that is self-driving. So eventually, the goal is to have the cars pick up people without drivers. Now, two implications here. One, for them to be in this level of beta testing, that means that they've been doing this for a while without the city knowing. Because a part of the story is that the fact that that San Francisco, it was unbeknownst to San Francisco. And so they're in this stage of beta testing, which means they've been having self-driving cars on the road for some time without anybody knowing, which is, in a way, it's a testament to the technology, but also is a little unnerving when you think about the implications, right? But anyway, but the most important part of this story, actually, I want to add on top of this story, Amazon Prime Direct today delivered their first same day 30-minute drone delivery. And actually it took 13 minutes for the drone to get from their warehouse to the person's home. It was in the Cambridgeshire countryside. And I'm sorry, it wasn't today. It was December 7th that it was delivered. The drones are loaded at a fulfillment center. You know the story. They're packed up. They have flown out to the location. This is, so it's both exciting because of the applications of technology, but very, very sobering when you think of the ramifications for labor, right? Because the first thing I thought of was like, hell, I don't know about the self-driving cars yet, but let me order something from Amazon. And if I can get it in 13 minutes, then let me order it now, right? But the immediate thought in my mind is like, this is legit taking jobs away from an entire sector, right? We're talking about taking millions of jobs away. I mean, Amazon has already started this process of replacing FedEx and UPS and the United Postal Service by hiring out their own drivers and buying their own vans. So they already started this process of cannibalizing their competition. But now when you add on top of the drone delivery as well as the self-driving cars vis-a-vis Uber and Google's technology, you can clearly see the picture of where we're going here, right? We're going to a labor-free society. We're going to a world where we don't need people to ship. We don't need people to serve you your fast food. We don't need people to drive your cars. So you're looking at the taxi business. You're looking at the Uber business. I mean, the Uber and Lyft industry, right? All these freelancers, they're getting ready to be quickly taken out of the market as soon as self-driving cars comes fully online. Which really takes us to another conversation altogether, is like, this is not a tenable progression of technological change underneath our current economic structure. Basically, this ain't gonna work without some level of socialism and some level of basic income. Because we're talking about, let me look at the numbers here with Uber, right? Even with Uber, we're talking about they have 327,000 drivers as of December of 2015. So I don't even know. It's a year later. I don't even know what their current number of drivers are. You're talking about 233,000 taxi drivers. In the fast food industry, you're talking about 3.6 million people who are eventually going to be replaced by robots, right? There's a huge push to get robots to replace people in spite of or because of the push for 15. And then you're thinking about UPS, FedEx, and the United States Postal Service. You're talking about 1.2 million. We're talking about millions of people who are slated to have their jobs completely replaced by some form of automation or self-driving cars or drones. And not a single conversation is being had on what our society and our economy can or should look like in the presence of automation. And you know who else is not having this conversation? Clearly, Republicans and conservatives are not having this conversation. But when that conversation comes around to liberals and neoliberals, the conversation becomes, oh, well, you should just retool. Go back to school. Some of the people driving Uber, they're professors. They're people who are just trying to, because the cost of living in your city had gotten so high that they needed an extra job. So it's not, we have been avoiding a very necessary conversation for a very long time. And now we're getting to the point where we're getting ready to hit critical mass when millions of people will be able to be replaced by automation and by self-driving cars and by drone delivery. We're not going to be able to move forward with that new economy without either completely ravaging an entire sector, an entire block of the American population, or having conversations about the necessity of basic income. I thought that story was pretty revealing and telling in terms of the conversations, our politics, we're not keeping up with technology. Our political leaders are not keeping up with technology, and we're getting to a critical point where they're getting ready to hear from the people who are going to be hurt by this technology. Again, 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation. A couple of other stories that are on the radar. Pretty big, significant news coming from the Fed. The Fed has decided to raise rates for the first time since December 2015. And that was the only other time in the last decade, I believe, that the Fed raised the rates. Actually, it was 2006 was the last time the Fed raised the rates. And the rates are going to be raised by 0.25%. So the Fed put rates at 0 in December of 2008 because of, obviously, the recession. And we've been riding very close to 0 ever since. So there's two ways of looking at this. This could be a signal from the Fed basically saying that they feel there's inflationary forces that are coming around the corner and we're going to raise the rates. But then also, if you take a look at the proposals from Donald Trump, his massive spending on infrastructure with a reduction in tax revenues, this could be the Fed's response, their monetary policy response to his proposed fiscal policy. I'm not sure exactly. I'm not sure if there was an explanation as to why, but you can consider factors like that in their decision-making process. In that conversation, it's funny that Donald Trump has been talking about his policies being able to push us to a 4% rate of growth. Meanwhile, the Fed, who's obviously going to be far more accurate than Donald Trump's spitball, is saying that we can expect a 2% rate of growth over the next up until 2019. So we'll keep an eye on actually what happens. Really, this looks like this is a signal saying that they're going to, the increase in the rate was modest, but I think it's more of a signal to say that we're going to increase rates over time to stave off potential inflation. But I love the fact that they are right here basically saying, Trump, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Who else said that? I think it was Mitt Romney. They make these lofty promises about how big and how fast they're going to make the economy grow. And realistically, economy, the size and the age of the United States economy, you're lucky if you get 3%. You're not going to see 4%. And the Fed is saying that we can expect about 2% annual growth through 2019. All right. Again, I told you we had a lot of stories tonight. The other thing I want to talk about is the conflict of interest. The potential conflict of interest between Rick Perry, who is now the pick for Donald Trump's Department of Energy, and the fact that Rick Perry is actually a member of the board of directors of Energy Transfer Partners. That's the company that's behind the Dakota Access Pipeline. He joined the board in 2015, and I would say that it's a conflict of interest, except for the fact that just about everything that Donald Trump has done has been a conflict of interest. But I think it adds an extra layer of interest. Let me put it like that. It makes the story more interesting when you hear this clip that was shared by this audio clip that was shared by Sean King. He received this clip from a anonymous source who recorded a conversation of the board of directors discussing the implications of the election of Donald Trump for the Dakota Access Pipeline. So for those of you who haven't been keeping up, the water protectors, the No Dapple protests, they scored a pretty decent victory when the Army Corps of Engineers said they did not give and grant the final permits that the pipeline needed. However, the board of directors for Energy Transfer Partners feel 100% confident that the incoming president won't be a problem, and that the incoming president, who has already said he's on the side of the pipeline, is going to do everything that's needed to get the pipeline completed. So I want to play this clip of the audio that was obtained by Sean King of the New York Daily News. And this is an image on your screen of his post regarding it. Listen in. I'm starting, you can see the paragraph at the bottom. I'm starting at 6 minutes and 30 seconds into the audio, and listen closely.
Election night changed everything here. And, we now are going into a transition where we're going to have a new president of the United States, which, who gets it. He understands what we're doing here, and we fully expect that as soon as he gets inaugurated, his team is going to move to get the final approvals done, and we'll begin to put capital across Lake Hawaii. It's about a 64-day drill that we have left. Like I said, we drilled on both sides of the river up to the point where we...
All right. So essentially, the Energy Transfer Partners, they're confident that Donald Trump is going to help them complete it. The fact that Rick Perry is on the board, that pretty much tells you that the administration is going to be in favor of it. The takeaway is that whatever is going to be done to stop this has to be done before January 20th, and it has to come in a manner that cannot be undone by the next by the incoming president. It also tells us that if it's not completely stopped by January 20th, that the protests probably will get worse before they get better. The confrontations between the protesters and the police, because the water protectors, they're not going anywhere, as they should not. They should stand their ground. And with the Trump administration and with the private police and the actual police being in league with the pipeline company, it looks like it could just be a complete disaster when the shit hits the fan for this. So we'll keep an eye on that as it progresses and develops. All right, let's take this caller. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Hello.
Hi, yes, you're live on the air. What's your name?
I'm Brianna. I called a couple days ago, but my question is not just specifically on the pipelines, but more in general about climate change as a whole. It looks like since, Trump denies climate change and he's pointing all these people who also deny it, what can us as people who are activists for climate change or people who are concerned about the climate as a whole, what can we do to combat this? Like, do we have to fight this on state-by-state level now, since this seems the federal government is not going to do anything about it? And they're going to go all regulations as much as they can? Or are we going to have to depend on people like Leonardo DiCaprio to change Donald Trump's mind?
You know what?
Say, hey, climate change is real.
You know what?
Do we have to depend on,
yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because you would think, thanks for the call, you would think that Actually, no, let me take that sentence back. I have to correct myself. I was going to say you would think that Donald Trump, with entertaining conversations with Al Gore, blah, 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 then maybe he wouldn't be as ridiculous as he is. But clearly, Donald Trump has held every position on climate change imaginable. What can people do? I'm not, besides participating in the protests or remotely supporting the protests, being active as you can on your local level, helping get people elected into power that actually believe the science. I mean, there's such a long list of things that you can do, but how impactful would they be? Would it be as impactful as Leonardo DiCaprio going to sit with Donald Trump to try to convince him otherwise? I don't know, but I would say we should just do all the above. For that matter, we should do all the above because critical mass is kind of an understatement at this point. I think I'm going to get a call here from Jeff from TYT Nation. He wanted to chime in, so I'm going to clear up the line. Jeff, if you want to call in, video in, we could talk about the comment that you wanted to join in. Jeff, if you guys don't know, check him out at TYT Nation. Great show, great colleague of mine. Always love to get his input. While I wait for him to call, let's discuss a couple of more things. I told you we have a lot to talk about, and I'm going to try to hit every single one of them. So yesterday, yesterday it got brought up on my show, but not the way that I wanted to get brought up on my show. the marijuana legalization, in Boston. I think tomorrow is the day. The initiative, there's an initiative passed here in Massachusetts with 1.8 million people voting for the measure to legalize recreational use of marijuana, and it actually goes into effect on tomorrow. So there is progress happening in Massachusetts. I am curious as to what Jeff Sessions, who is like all things against marijuana, I am curious as to what Jeff Sessions is going to do to crack down from the federal level when the state level has spoken, right? Republicans love states' power until it infringes on their moral sensibilities. All right. They're all about states' power when it comes to economics and preventing the increase in the minimum wage on a state level. But they're all about suppressing it when it's time for a state to say, we want marijuana. And Boston and Massachusetts has said for people over 21 years old, it is legal to recreationally use marijuana. It's also going to be illegal to drive underneath the influence of marijuana. But there is no equivalent for marijuana, for cannabis, like the 0.08 blood alcohol limit. So it's going to be interesting to see how they actually tell how influence, and is there a threshold, right? Is there, can we find that threshold so we can know and let us know? And then selling weed is also outlawed until the state treasurer can set up a regulated marketplace and licenses retail stores, which is a good thing for people who like to buy weed and buy it without having to pay expensive taxes on it. So hopefully, for a friend, hopefully they can delay that treasury setup as long as possible to keep the prices as low as possible. So voters here in Massachusetts, they were joined by voters in Maine, California, Nevada, and on election night, passing legislation that are passing referendums on marijuana use, legalizing marijuana use. Colorado, Oregon, and Washington State, Alaska, and D.C., they voted on that years ago. So, we're progressive here in Massachusetts, but we're still a little behind the 8 ball. All right. I've got Jeff on the line. Jeff, let me see if I can get my screen up here. There you go. I see you on the screen. How's it going, my friend? Thanks so much for joining me.
No, hey, thanks for being able to pencil me in on such short notice.
Amen.
I just wanted to address one of the issues that you talked about earlier with that whole Amazon drone. But thank you again for making some room for me.
Hey, no problem, man. We got about 3, maybe 5. Maybe I could squeeze 5 minutes out of my my coworkers here. But let it rip. What's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to talk about the whole Amazon drones basically putting a whole bunch of truckers out of business. And it always brings me back to the topic of automation is going to take over.
Right.
I mean, we can talk about, living wage, which I support. I support a $15 minimum wage. Hell, I support more.
Right, right.
Based on worker productivity, we should be up to like $22 an hour. But at some point, even with all of that, and even with if we, had incredibly strong unions, we're still going to see automation. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. So, and this Amazon story, this newest one, where we see, technology starting to take over, and it's kind of awesome on one hand, and it's frightening on the other, because especially if you're in labor.
Yeah.
Okay. And the way I see it, we've got two choices going down the line. Everybody knows it's coming.
Yeah.
Right. And we got two ways to go as a society.
Mm-hmm.
We're either going to go the way of, more of the happier utopian, not really quite utopian, but at least a universal basic income kind of way.
Right, right.
Or we're going to end up in Hunger Games, essentially. And
I mean, really, it sounds funny what you said, but the truth of the matter is you're going to have people competing for bread. I mean, you're talking about putting an entire sector, several sectors out of work with no labor. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely, I mean, that's it. That kind of nails it on the head. I mean, this is going to be bad, and we still have the choice of what way we want to go. Unfortunately, what we're doing right now, I mean, especially with Donald Trump getting elected, and I still can't fucking believe it. Okay, I'm sorry about the swears, but
nah, it's cool.
I can't believe this.
Yeah.
I mean, you wake up in the morning, you're like, Donald Trump's going to be the president of the United States.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we done. Oh dear God. Oh no. And
it's bad. It's
bad. The Republicans, they've been given power. Like the labor secretary, Andy Pudster, is against labor.
Yeah.
Every single cabinet position that Donald Trump has put somebody in charge of is fundamentally against that agency.
Exactly, man. Exactly.
And and this does not bode well for the future. I mean, maybe the Democratic Party can get its shit together and, pick itself up off the floor, maybe put together back some of the pieces that have fallen off.
Right.
But,
I don't know. It looks like they're doubling down on stupid.
Yeah. Well, here's my metric for that, by the way. Keith Ellison.
Exactly.
If they do nominate, if they say, okay, Keith Ellison, run the DNC.
Right.
That right there, the Democratic Party's at least putting an effort into this.
Right.
And saying, okay, you guys are right. We should go in a more progressive direction. If they go with Tom Perez, that's it. I mean, that right there, it's your benchmark. If they don't do that, they put in Tom Perez, gone.
Right. I mean, I don't know exactly, because I don't know if at this point, and the stakes are so high, I don't know if we can tolerate if we could do anything but declare the Democratic Party to be an enemy if they double down on stupid like they've been showing. Like right now, they've been showing us all the tendencies to be as stupid as we thought that they were. Right. And now even with this Keith Ellison race, it looks like they want to triple down on it. And with the Bernie derangement syndrome that's going on, it's like they want to quadruple down on the idiocy that gave us Donald Trump. And we don't have time for that. I mean, we've really got to push back and bring some sanity from somewhere.
Right. And back to my original point, looking forward to the future, I mean, it looks dark. Yeah. It looks like dystopian. And look, maybe, I don't know, who knows what could happen. 2018, really, really important year. That's when we can try to take back the Congress. And if you can take back Congress, if Donald Trump, messes it up so much to the point of where, holy crap, this guy's an idiot. Yeah. We need to get somebody in there to counter him because he's just doing all these crazy things that we never thought that he was going to do. Trump supporters.
Yeah. Yeah, he's even losing Trump supporters at this point. Yeah. Yeah. Jeff,
a lot of them.
Hey, man, I hate to cut us short. I wish I could have got your notification earlier. We would have had a longer segment. But listen, man, anytime you want to come on, man, just give me a buzz. You see how quick I got you on? We'd love to have you on next time, man. And give me a shout. I'm going to come on to your show next.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks so much, man. I'll talk to you next time. All right, folks. That's all our time for tonight. I got through 10 stories. I had 12. But the rest will go into the Friday bonus show. So we'll see you on tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.